Halo, selamat pagi para sister. Apa kabarnya? Good day everyone. How are you? I hope you have a very good conditions in this weekend. Dan kenapa sih saya hari ini ngomong pakai bahasa Inggris gitu ya? Karena hari ini kita kedatangan tamu istimewa, yaitu Nelson dan Wendy dari Australia. Ini kali pertama Shestarts.id mendapatkan tamu dari luar sana gitu ya. Dan senang sekali bisa bergabung. So today we really very happy because we have a special guest from Australia, and I would like to invite my friends, my mentor, and my colleagues. I haven't met him for I think about 2 years. So Nelson, please join in us.
Hello.
Hi,
Good
Nelson, how are
morning.
you?
Thank you
I
so much, Nadia.
okay. Good
All right.
morning.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning. So Nelson,
Okay.
uh,
Do,
now
do you
as
want me to
invite
speak now?
all the sisters. So Nelson is the Director International Project from Queensland University of Technology, and I would like to ask Nelson give us some opening remark. How you feel about this activities, the program, and I hope you have insight for us. Thank you. Please, Nelson.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. Salamat pagi. Thank you for giving me this wonderful opportunity to meet each of you virtually and share some brief insights before today's real keynote from my good friend, Wendy Perry. When Nadia asked me to nominate an inspiring person, I immediately thought of Wendy. She is a remarkable woman and an entrepreneur. So, folks, I'm very excited for you. I would like to thank Nadia also and the organizing team of Shestarts.id for inviting us. I'm very proud that QUT alumni have started this program. At QUT, we believe in the transformative power of education and training. And this initiative is an example of how alumni can contribute to meaningful transformations. QUT is strongly committed towards transformative education, inclusion, and innovation. That's why we're very happy to be a partner of She Starts, and we believe in its mission. Personally, this program resonates well with my strong belief in the importance of empowering women through education. And as I always said, I dedicate this particular part of my advocacy to a very important woman in my life, my mother. I was raised by a single mother somewhere in rural Philippines. And my favorite quintessential story of my mom is how she explained to me on my graduation night why we went home to a dark house. She explained to me she had to make a decision between the power bill or new shoes for me. That night, I promised myself I will change that narrative. And I'm very grateful to my mom, my single mother, who worked so hard to support me. She has been an important part of my journey. My mom happens to be a public school teacher, but before that, she sold fish in the market and she worked at the tuna canning factory, waking up at 4 a.m. just to feed us. She taught me so many good values that made me who I am today, being graceful under pressure, being nurturing, being resourceful, being resilient, maintaining a positive outlook, and to use my mind and heart in making decisions. She taught me the value of being kind and being grateful. And above all, she instilled in me the transformative value of education, the love for learning. Fortunately, I got an Australian scholarship when I was 18, which gave me the breakthrough opportunity to live a good story. I became an international development practitioner, which I used to give me a sense of purpose and direction. So from my viewpoint, I know that behind a person's journey is a woman. Folks, unfortunately, this COVID-19 pandemic will produce grim realities. Communities and families will be shaken, and women will even be worse off. There will be lots of challenges, and the recovery will be slow and painful. And in this scenario, there are at least two types of people. On the one hand, those who are part of the problem, and on the other, those who are part of the solution. I hope you know which type of person you will be in this volatile and complex world. Terima kasih banyak. I wish you all a restful break and meaningful time with your family during the festive season. Take care of yourself and each other. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Nelson. It's very touching me, and yes, there always a woman behind every journey in our life. And I really thank you for QT and your support, Nelson, for this event. And also how you introduced me to Wendy, who will speak for us, who will share about how the woman present in Australia. So we can learn each other. We can get insight from how the woman present in Australia tackle the pandemic situation. Thank you so much, Nelson. And I would like to introduce my team, Geraldine, and also introduce Wendy, who will share to us about how womanpreneur tackling pandemic situation in Australia. And I think this is a good way for us to learn something from other people. And please, Geraldine and Wendy, come to join with us. And I would like to give the screen for both of you. Enjoy the discussion, and I will be waiting all of you on the backstage. Thank you, Wendy.
Thank you, Melandia. And thank you, Nelson.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Geraldine from Shestarts.id. Thank you for joining our session today. So today's topic is about reshaping business for small and medium business during and post-pandemic for womenpreneur in every place in the world, based on our speaker's experience in Australia. So our speaker today, please welcome Wendy Perry, a Managing Director of Workforce Blueprint Australia and Entrepreneur Facilitator in Australia. Hi, Wendy, how are you?
I'm good. Selamat pagi, everyone. Lovely to see you. We're really excited to be here to chat with you as well.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you here, and we can listen to your experience, your knowledge and insight from Australia to here to all womenpreneur in Indonesia. So without any further ado, please, you can share everything to us.
Excellent. Thank you, Geraldine. And thank you, Nelson, for that introduction. That was very warm-hearted and touching. And I know that you've got lots of special women in your life, but your mum is very special. She's brought up a lovely young fellow. I think being a little bit young. So everybody, we're going to talk about the impact of the pandemic, and we need to go through a little bit of history. But we're going to also share some examples with you of female founders and women entrepreneurs that have changed and pivoted their business. And then we'll look sort of towards the next year. But I'm going to touch on some of the things that also the Australian government and our states and territories did too. And if we can compare some notes, if you've got any questions or comments or suggestions, please put those in the comment box. And you know, I miss my Indonesian friends very much. So this is a photo of a number of female entrepreneurs that I was working with in 2017. And if you've been to Australia, I don't know if you recognise where it is, but Indonesians, everyone loves shopping, and this was the Sydney markets there. So I really do appreciate and miss my friends from Indonesia. I've done a lot of work over the years, particularly with entrepreneurs and people in the entrepreneurial eco startup system. If you have been to Australia, if you could put into the comment chat box where you've been, what city or town or location, that would be great. I live in Adelaide, South Australia. Nelson is from Brisbane in Queensland. And we often argue over the best state territory. Obviously, I think it's South Australia. He thinks it's where he's based. If we could go to the next slide, please, that'd be great. And let me just give you a little bit of background. I founded Workforce Blueprint back in 2002. So, 18, 19 years ago. And back then, it wasn't really something that many women were doing. The statistics that are formally counted in Australia, they say that about a third of the business owners or founders in Australia are women. I think that number is a little bit higher. And certainly through this year, we've seen a lot of women start up their businesses. The work through Workforce Blueprint is strategic workforce planning and development. So a lot about the current workforce, the future workforce and the gap. And over the years, we've worked with Australia and other countries' vocational education and training systems. But a key theme that has come through all of this is the need for job creation, entrepreneurship and innovation. So, from that kind of education and training background into strategic workforce planning and development, and using that to sort of also springboard into entrepreneurship and innovation. If we have a look at the next slide, there's another role that I play, and that...
And the next one.
Yes, next one, please. That role is as the entrepreneurship facilitator for Adelaide, and that service is called Switch Start Scale. So one of the things that our government here tried, probably in 2017, 2018, was 3 entrepreneurship facilitators helping people with business ideas, startups and scale-ups in only 3 locations. That was really successful. They were in other locations to where I am. And then there was a tender that went out for 20 more locations around the country. And we were lucky enough to win the role for Adelaide. So basically, the government is investing in entrepreneurship facilitators who are coaches and mentors and supporters. And the sort of work that we do is one-on-one coaching and mentoring, group events and workshops and tours, and also promoting entrepreneurship more broadly.
Mm-hmm.
Now, about that statistic, so we can just stay on this slide here for a moment. And this is a little bit of a breakdown of the sorts of clients that I mostly work with. And each entrepreneurship facilitator will have a different profile. It could be, because I'm female and I've run a business for a while, so certain people are more like attracted to work with you. But 75% of the clients that I work with are women. And this entrepreneurship facilitator started in January 2019. So over that time, we've had over 7,000 interactions with clients, either one-on-one or at events. The other thing in Australia, there's a phenomenon, and we have a bit of a different age profile, to Indonesia. You have a much younger age profile.
Yes.
What we're seeing here is many women who are experienced, or they know their industry really well and they know the problems that need solving. They're a little bit more mature, they kind of get to their 40s perhaps. Maybe also they want some more flexibility around their family and they decide to start a business.
Okay, it's interesting.
Yeah, and the other thing that we're seeing is more cultural diversity too.
Mm-hmm.
So people that were born outside of Australia that are new to Australia. And some of the things that are starting to emerge, I don't know if when you were in Australia you saw any Indigenous dance groups or met any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander, sort of people with with the programs with QUT, they often do an opening. But we're starting to see more of a focus on Indigenous entrepreneurs, particularly in food and beverages and tourism. And there's also a lot of women in that health and wellbeing, professional services, education space. Next slide, please.
Okay.
So when the pandemic first started to, I guess, be something that we were concerned about in Australia, I remember I was to Sri Lanka to work on a project in tourism, and I was flying back through, the airport there, and, you started to see people, more wearing masks and more concerned about, hygiene and things like this. This was at the end of January. And we had our first confirmed case of coronavirus here in Australia on the 25th of January in Melbourne, in Victoria. And some of you might have seen some of the concerns and issues that, you know, and the experience that Victoria in particular have gone down. We'll touch on that a little bit later. But at first, and I don't know what it's like for you in Indonesia, it wasn't really something that we were very concerned about.
Oh.
You know, a lot of people didn't think it was going to perhaps get as big as it did. You know, perhaps it might not come to Australia too much, you know, or affect our economy or business. So if you were not watching out for it and seeing what was happening overseas, a lot of people were taken by surprise and they were in shock. Yeah. If we could go to the next slide, please. And this is what it was like. Like, these photos are from February, and I'm here with a female founder called Genevieve. We hosted a business launch, we call it like a business shower. You know, like a baby shower, but for a business. And she basically has a business which is about developing future leaders with a social impact.
Okay.
So her programs align to the UN.
It's a nice event, actually.
Well, we had about 150 people there, you know, and we didn't even think about it, or, you know, we weren't really conscious of what was happening with you know, these developments. I also had another client, and her name's Dina. She's French-Portuguese, and she launched Villagehood Australia. And that was a business basically supporting mums and their kids. And what happens in that business is they have dedicated me time, but also things like, you know, Pilates and Zumba and all different kind of activities. But she's essentially building a community for women. And she launched her business the week before we had the announcements in Australia that we were going into lockdown.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, let me know in the comment chat box if you've heard about Kangaroo Island.
Kangaroo Island.
Yeah, Kangaroo Island.
Anybody know that island?
It's off of South Australia, and that last photo there on the slide was a tour where I took 50 people over to the island. And that was because we had devastating bushfires. So if you're tracking the news, you might have seen that this time last year, we had awful bushfires, we had deaths, we had so much, you know, land destroyed. And Kangaroo Island is very big, but about 2/3 or even 3/4 of the island was burnt. So we went over to the island, 50 of us, to do an innovation tour to look at different businesses, including female-founded companies, and spend money there.
Yeah.
Things were tracking along, and I remember we hosted the 30th birthday of my son-in-law in waiting, we call him, because he's engaged to our youngest daughter. And that was about the 14th of March, and we were still able to have people in our house and whatever. It was really the following week where we had a huge announcement from our Prime Minister about serious lockdown. And these are the responses. So the photo on the left-hand side is Jo. She's got her Zoom clothes up the top and her track
and long at the bottom.
Not exactly pajamas, but, you know, she's a woman that is a fashion stylist, and she has an online store as well. That's the business that she ran. And we had virtual drinks on the 19th of March. And what then also happened was a lot of the schools shut down. So many of the female founders and women in our sort of ecosystem were finding that they were absolutely having to, you know, manage homeschooling, consider their business and what they were going to do. And it was you know, from March into April, it started to feel really serious. What happened with the government was they introduced a payment for job seekers, those people that were unemployed, but they took a little bit of time to do anything to help anybody who was running their own business. But we did have this payment come in called JobKeeper, and it was a wage subsidy of 1,500 Australian dollars per fortnight per employee. And at first, they were not letting self-employed or sole traders, people that were just in business themselves, solo entrepreneurs, access that. But there was a lot of pressure put on the government, and they changed that. The photo before was of the lineup to get registered for it. It was crazy, and our government really had to, put a lot of resources into it. The other thing that was really impacting women entrepreneurs and families in particular was childcare.
Yes.
So the government also brought in a response around free childcare. But again, it was limited places. It was more for where there were essential workers and, most women were still caring for their children at home and also trying to homeschool them. And many of them did not have really an education background at all. And our schools and institutions, they had to really scale up very quickly to be supportive. So let's move on to the next slide, and we'll talk about what happened in terms of what women did with their businesses.
Okay, next slide, please.
So with this, I don't know how it was. You can let me know perhaps in Indonesia how similar or different it was, but it was like every week there was a new feeling or a new sensation almost. So shock and disbelief was what we saw first. And then what happened is we went into, well, can we still keep running our businesses? Is it possible to do what we were doing before? Do we need to change it? Can we pivot? Pivot's sort of like the word for business in 2020. And what can we do? So we saw a lot of people, for example, go online. Like images here are from a client who was running a dance studio. She started a YouTube channel. Barley in a jar, took cooking online. I had another.
Yeah. There is a big disruption. Everything is going digital after that pandemic start.
Massive disruption. And, I had another client who was a photographer and did a lot of weddings. So she introduced weddings in isolation. But these were the sorts of challenges that we saw. So in the chat box or comment box, let me know what were the challenges that happened for you and your business.
Okay, teman-teman yang mempunyai tantangan atau challenge tertentu silahkan share di kolom komen, nanti bisa saya bantu translate ke bahasa Inggris. So, okay, Wendy, please continue.
Very good. So we saw lots of, customers and bookings cancelled, particularly if it was a business where it was like an experience-based startup or company, because people were so nervous and they didn't know what was happening with the economy. They pushed a lot of projects out. So, proposals and things fell through, delays, and we had many people just going, oh my goodness. Am I going to be okay? Is my business going to be okay? Is my family going to be okay? And we also saw a real rise around mental health issues.
Yeah.
So was that similar in Indonesia for you, Geraldine?
Very similar. And the very sad news is there's also an increase in not only mental health but also for childcare and also the for the home, there is also an increase in the, what would I say, because the parents are very stressful. The child care and the mental health of the child also hurts.
Yeah.
Yeah, for the violation of the child, there's also an increase in Indonesia.
Yeah. We definitely saw an increase in domestic violence as well, where people were not necessarily safe in their home. But let's have a look at the next slide and see what people actually did about it. And we've got some excellent examples of female founders I want to talk to you about.
Okay.
So I guess, was it like this as well, Geraldine, in Indonesia, where there were huge lineups for the shopping supermarket to get supplies and toilet paper and food?
In Indonesia, there is a line for instant noodle, actually.
Yes, I can understand for sure. So, we had retail and essential businesses that were like skyrocketing. We had people that were just waiting to see what would happen. But as I've got on that slide there, anything that was experience-based, anyone that had a business in those kind of areas where you more or less have to see people face-to-face, that was really hard. And then everyone was trying out online everything, you know. So one of the webinars that we did I did it with another female founder who runs an accountancy and finance company, was how to start a side hustle and keep it going. And we had hundreds and hundreds of people register for that. Okay. But a lot of people did flip to online where they could, you know, so depending upon the sort of startup and the business that they had. And if they were not doing much online already, they really took it to the next level. Networking, I know networking is a bit different in Indonesia because I've worked with people when we've come to Australia and gone to Indonesia at different events and things. But in Australia, we do a lot of networking. Like people go to things all the time and see each other. And so that had a massive impact because that was a way that a lot of people got introductions, connections with investors, new customers. So it really changed the kind of business culture, the way that we sort of do business as well. And this notion of pivoting, which we're going to look at some examples now of people that did pivot, you know, like pivot, keep going until you've got no option. So let's have a look at the next slide and some examples. So this is an example of a woman, her name's Alison Nicola. She is based here in Adelaide. She's a good friend. And she has a startup which is called Care App. So Care App was developed because she had her grandparents in an aged care facility. And there was a big problem around the communication, keeping in touch. You know, family members were scattered around Australia, also overseas. So she developed this app to help the communication between family members and also between the professional, you know, nursing aged care staff. She had not long launched her business. Maybe she launched it last year. And what she did is she made her app free for anybody in an aged care facility in Australia. So what her strategy here was to get significant numbers of sign up to her app, and she also managed to get investment through this time as well. And then, you know, the next step is to convert to paying customers. But she got so much media attention and support from this as well because it was basically a response to COVID and he helped to keep families.
You can help people.
Yeah. Now, this next example, this woman's name is Cassie Day, and she has a son with a disability. She has the carer's place, and she had gone from just herself to a team now that's significantly growing. She took all of the services online straight away. She built up a Facebook community. All of her staff are working from home. And she's now situated as like a real prominent #1 supporter for carers and disability, you know, agency with an amazing kind of reputation and, you know, easy engagement, but with real heart and care for what she's doing. So she's another great example. And then if we have a look at the next slide, then there was other examples in different sorts of areas. So this is 3 different examples. The one on the left-hand side, this woman's name is Laura Tolson, and she runs a company with her brother called Lateral Vision. This is a VR company. And, you know, they were doing a lot of work in different industry sectors, but they pivoted because all the schools were closed and, you know, the schools still wanted to do tours of the schools so they could get students and things for next year, next term. They created virtual reality school tours. And the other thing that they did was in real estate. So, you know, with real estate, you go and you do an open inspection and you check out the house and you decide if you want to buy it. But people couldn't go and do that through this time. So they created VR real estate sort of tours.
Like virtual tour.
Virtual tours, yeah. So they pivoted their business and, you know, they've done a bunch of other things, but that was just a couple of examples.
Okay.
Now, Geraldine, I don't know, have you been to Australia yourself?
No, I'm not yet. Not yet. I haven't. But will.
Yes, of course. And if we could just go back to that slide before for a minute. One of the places that a lot of people love going to is Queensland.
Okay, Chia, can you please go back to the last slide?
Yeah, a lot of people love going to Queensland where Nelson lives. Also, it has the Gold Coast, Cairns, it has the Great Barrier. Leanne Kemp, in that image there, she is the chief entrepreneur for Queensland. She's a blockchain company, and they look at things like the source of diamonds and art and fine wine. She really ramped up her support during so many events online, and when she could, she got out and about into the regions. And people love that visibility and networking. And the final example there is a woman called Jess with Cook and Create. So she was going to set up a cooking school, but you know, with COVID and all of the restrictions, she had to take it online first, and then she's turned it into a mobile-based business that she's running now. All right, let's move on to the next part, which was really about some of the lessons that we learned and some of the things that female entrepreneurs or women entrepreneurs are really good at. This is the image of Val from our Whitmale Dance Studio, who took everything online, and Sarah Cordner, because one of the things that a lot of female founders in Australia did was they ramped up or increased the amount of content that they were creating. And Sarah helped a number of our clients to turn their knowledge into online programs. So we're going to touch around these 7 strengths of women entrepreneurs, and you can let me know in the comment box if you agree or disagree, or you would add or change things. Let's go to the next slide, because communication was really important through this whole time. And many women were quite isolated. Some of them were even living by themselves, or, you know, with a partner where they were not happy. You know, my clients broke up with their partners. But if you, the next slide.
Next slide, please.
People found some really interesting ways to communicate. And this is a photo from May. This is at the beach in Brighton, about 10 minutes from where I live. And we have a woman who has a business that does sand mandalas. So you basically give her an idea for a design. I don't know if this happens in Indonesia, if you know of someone who does this, and then you pay her and she creates these sand mandalas. And she does one every morning, you know, when the tide comes and the sand is smooth. So with the entrepreneurship facilitator service, we could tell that people were not feeling themselves. So we asked for this sand mandala to be created. You know, that was just basically communication about encouraging people, you know, let them know that they're supported.
That you are not alone.
You're not alone. And because we were still allowed to go out, you know, for exercise, we could actually go down and see some photos of it. But people loved the message behind it.
Okay, it's a very nice idea.
Let's go to the next slide, and let's have a look at this next sort of strength area. And that was conversation, you know. So these are more like formal conversations and informal conversations. And, you know, in Australia and in our entrepreneurial ecosystem, if you do not have gender balance, as in 50-50, then you will get absolutely pulled up on it. People will complain to you about it, and, you know, people will post on social media. So through formal mechanisms like advice to government, I have a role on the Industry Skills Council. They are very conscious of that too, feeding in and I feed in what are the needs of entrepreneurs and startups into the government to help them design their program. But in August, we were able to host a dinner, and we had 50 leaders come to that about reigniting the economy, and we did 50-50 men and women. And I organised it so in detail that we had 50-50 men and women on every table as well. But that was a fantastic conversation. We had political leaders there, chief entrepreneur there, people with big businesses, startups, entrepreneurs. And I think there's an opportunity for us as female founders to step up and create those opportunities for conversation, which is what this was.
Yeah.
Let's have a look at the next slide. Consultation was really important. And if anyone has been on any of the programs that I've done with Nelson before, you might have heard us talk about Chooks SA. This is a Facebook group with women who basically want to see more investment in female-founded and female-led businesses. Okay. So you can join it, but this group the founder of this movement is now on the Entrepreneurial Advisory Board for government. And a lot of the comments and content that are in this group, you know, supports women to look at investment, funding, you know, connections with key people, including investors, and, you know, to take up those opportunities. And of course, if anything is not gender balanced, it'll also play out in a group like this where people are just not accepting of that at all anymore. But we also highlight a lot of the stories of female founders and what women are doing. We could have a look at the next slide, please. And, you know, that's now gone into formal kind of consultation with government and other agencies. The other part of it is collecting evidence and information about what your customers need. So social media is a great way to do that, and obviously we couldn't meet as much face-to-face. So having a private group, so in Facebook you might have WhatsApp, or you might use other sort of social media platform, but, you know, Australians on Facebook. So a private group there to test out ideas, to get feedback, to ask for suggestions and recommendations, and then feed that into whatever it is in terms of products and services that you might be offering. I think female founders are really good about collecting evidence and information and listening to what people need, and then flipping that into, you know, some sort of solution.
Okay, it's like a community, right? Or is it?
Yeah,
like a community?
Yeah, I mean, you are sort of collecting evidence and information, and you are building a community too, and a bit of a following. And I think every female founder needs that.
Okay.
Slide, please. And it's sort of related to that area then of collaboration, and I wanted to just tell you about this exciting opportunity. Now, we don't know if we're going to get funding for this yet, but the photo down the bottom, and the woman that's like laughing with the microphone, she does game fishing, like tuna fishing. She has the only all-female fishing crew that does game fishing in Australia.
Okay.
Her name is Tracy. So she, alongside with Kirsten from Motorsport, and another woman who runs a helicopter company, we have put in an application, and it might not get funded, but just to give you a bit of an idea as to what we're doing, Australian government does have a women economic development strategy, and they have this women's leadership and development program. So we put in a project where women will try out game fishing, motorsport, flying, and horse riding and horsemanship, to basically build their confidence, you know, their experience and so on. It's quite an unusual project, but the opportunities for collaboration that come out of COVID is just huge, amazing. All right, we need to move on quickly, so let's have a look at the next one.
Yes, okay, next slide, please.
Now, we touched on mental health before. Taking care of yourself became absolutely essential, so important. This is Belle Ryan. She is an art therapist, and what we were able to do is collaborate with her to run online art therapy and mindfulness sessions, and quite a few you know, women in that health and wellbeing space stepped up and provided their services through COVID, because many people were really struggling. Next slide.
Mental health is very important at this time.
Absolutely. It really became such a priority, particularly when we were like really seriously locked down.
Yes.
All right.
Okay, next slide, please.
Yeah. So content creation, DSAC, she is Balinese. She's the founder of Bali in a Jar. So she creates Balinese sauces and so on. She stepped up to create more content, more video, and did online cooking classes. And for those female founders, you know, that kind of thought, yes, about your products and services, but also about your other knowledge, and were able to create content, it was a real opportunity over this year to position as a leader and position as somebody that, you know, other people look up to as an expert. Next slide, thanks. And DSAC sources are really lovely. So just in summary, here are the 7 C's, again, around the strengths. These photos are from November 2019, when we were still able to get together, and DSAC launched her business at an event that we hosted with ministers, and, you know, again, a couple of hundred people were there. Next slide, thanks. Now, webinars went crazy, and some of you might have a business where you provide webinars or online learning. It was really hard in the beginning because so many people flooded the market with free content. So that might have had an impact on your business. With Switch Start Scale, we did over 60 online webinars and sessions from March through until November on all different topics. And if you want to take a look at some of those recordings, they are in English, but you're more than welcome to check those out. But webinars, online events just went crazy. I think now people are probably over that as well. So next slide, thank you. And Geraldine, you think enough people have had Zoom in Indonesia too?
Sorry?
Do you think people have had enough of Zoom in Indonesia as well?
Very. I mean, I think like in one day we can have 2 until 3 Zoom meetings actually.
Yes, well, sometimes I have 6, 7, and 8 in one day.
Wow.
Yeah. So just a couple of things to finish off before we open up for questions. And because I live in a state like South Australia, we didn't really have anything too serious in terms of COVID. We only have had 4 deaths here, so not many at all. But we had lots of scares. So in Melbourne, you might have seen that we had 112 days of lockdown, and I can't imagine what that was like. I did an interview with the entrepreneurship facilitator from Melbourne, and there's a book about tips on, surviving that second wave. And it was so strict, they were not even allowed to go outdoors for exercise much at all. It was real concern because the government did elimination was really the strategy to get rid of COVID here. And an outbreak out of, hotel quarantine and overseas travellers returning. So it's a reminder that these things are still going to pop up. And on the next slide, you'll see some photos that are only taken about a month ago. So this is now like a COVID-safe event. And what it was how to create a TV show. So Tracy, who I mentioned before, who was the game fishing person, and Val, who runs our Ritmo dance studio, one of the things that they were able to do through COVID was create TV shows that have now aired on TV, and they're into negotiating their next series. So lots of people were able to do projects or do things that they didn't have time for before. And you can watch those if you want to, see what they're about. But that was a huge achievement to get a TV show up and running and, sharing what they're working on. And then on the next slide, if we can move to that, we did have a little scare here in South Australia. It was after this event that I'd run and with 150 people. And it was in the same suburb where I ran this event. So it was a concern. We had an issue with pizza delivery. It was all a bit involved. But anyway, the government here thought that coronavirus had transferred via a pizza box. So they ordered us into an incredibly strict 6-day lockdown with only a few hours notice. But the person that was providing the information lied. This is what the Premier, the government said. And in the end, we only had a 3-day lockdown. So again, people thought they were going to get all these things done, but, it was we thought it was going to be longer and more serious, but it was only a 3-day sort of thing. But it's still a reminder, not that long ago, only 3 or 4 weeks ago, that this is still something that's a real concern that we need to take care of and keep an eye on.
We still have to confirm that COVID-19 is still around us, right?
Absolutely. And this kind of final, next slide is some statistics, which we won't look at now in detail, but it's really about where Australia is at now in terms of coronavirus. Like, it is under control. We do have some breakouts in Sydney. So if we just flick to the next slide and then go to the final one, which is really about what people are doing now. So the next slide has got images of people really looking forward to 2021. We still think that obviously we'll have, breakouts and so on. This is DSAC posting from Bali in a jar about how she's scaling up next year. On Thursday night, the image on the right, we had people at a Christmas party. That's DSAC, girl from Ignite Art Therapies. Judy, who runs her own business too, and everyone's feeling a lot more positive. And then the photo in the middle is from last night, where we had a number of female founders and leaders in the startup space get together to just celebrate the year that was. The final little image on there was Blue Poppy Ventures, which is something that I'm working on at the moment. So I want to set up an e-commerce startup to sell material-based products from female entrepreneurs from around the world, including Indonesia.
Wow.
Yeah, so
Very
if anyone's
nice.
in that space, I'm looking for some partnerships, you know.
We can do a collaboration between Indonesian Womenpreneur and Australian Womenpreneur then.
Yeah, absolutely. And LinkedIn is a key way to connect, Facebook or WhatsApp. But I can see as well there, Geraldine, there's a few questions there. Shall we pick up a couple of them?
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for sharing your knowledge to us. So yeah, there's so many challenges happen during pandemic, and we can see that womenpreneurs are fighting, and a support system is needed more than ever. But let's check to our comment section. Is there any question from our audience? Okay. First from Kiki Bidari. Okay, it is very interesting to see how women become creative during the pandemic. Agree and find opportunities in business. I'm curious if you know what is their motivation and how to find that motivation.
Yeah, thanks for that question, Kiki. And look, I guess we can't speak for all women or every woman, but there was a bit of a spectrum or a sliding scale. For some women, I think it was an absolute moment that they got to where they were incredibly worried about their future and their security, specifically around money and being able to keep rolling. So for some people, it got to the point where, well, if I don't do something, I'm going to be in real trouble. And specifically before we had the government announcements, because people just look like they're going to have to take care of themselves and be on their own. So I think part of it was about, goes back to those fundamental needs of, you know, safety, security, money. A lot of people motivated by their family. And some people had the perspective or the view that they wanted to see if they could come out of this better than when they went in. And because it was like a collective experience, like we all had similar experience, like not exactly the same, but it was taken out of your hands. You couldn't really influence it or do anything about it. I think that also meant that there was a lot of support and networking and, you know, people behind the scenes helping their friends and people in business, you know, and it became definitely more tolerant, more patient, kinder, you know, happy for people to experiment. If you try it and it doesn't work, it doesn't matter. So various motivations, depending upon, you know, if it's you have to figure out things yourself or you had anybody else to rely upon, but back to those fundamental basics.
Yes, women have to survive during this pandemic, especially it has become harder for them to gain income. Like in Indonesia, there's also a down in the income. Even it is reported that for women who depend on income from micro and small business, already dropped their income as many as 82%.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah, this is a difficult time, but again, I can see that women in Indonesia also is fighting for their life and trying to be empowered again.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, there is a next question from, let me check. Okay, Natural Factory. Wendy, according to your opinion, what factors are matters behind successful womenpreneurs in Australia? Can you share your thought?
Yeah. So what makes successful women entrepreneurs? Well, I think that they can self-motivate. They do have some sort of support usually behind them, whether or not that's a partner or family or kids or whatever. But, you know, they're encouraged by others to have a go and try something new or different. I think it's also about deeply understanding the problems that they're solving. So sometimes you come across people and they want to start their own business, but they don't have an idea as to what that might be, or maybe they don't have experience in the industry or in the field. But a lot of the time what women will do is they will educate themselves more, they'll study more, they'll more deeply kind of understand, you know, what those problems are and think through what to turn it into. So part of it is about that knowledge, that background knowledge. Definitely there is about support behind you and who's in your corner or who's got your back. And then the women tend to ask more for help. So they will reach out for mentoring, programs, guidance, support. Sometimes men, they'll ask for help and get it, but then they'll sort of think they'll be okay and they don't need that ongoing sort of support. And women generally also network very well with each other and are very collaborative. So that opens up a lot more partnership sort of opportunities and introductions to people as well.
Okay.
I guess, yeah, the other thing, Geraldine, is that in Australia we do have some government-funded initiatives and programs too. That women and men can tap into, but we're starting to see some more initiatives like women in STEM and entrepreneurship is a big focus too. So federal government and the state and territory governments are starting to put more opportunities and funding into that area.
So support, mentorship, and funding support is the key behind the successful womenpreneurs in Australia.
Well,
and also their own motivation.
Yeah, it's still very hard to get investment. That is an absolute, number one challenge. Hardly any women-led companies, very few get investment. So that's still something that we have to work on.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for the answer, Wendy. Let's go to the next questions from Miss Dewi Supraba. Hi, Wendy. I'm glad to see you. How can a womenpreneur from Indonesia be accepted in Australia? In your opinion, the business sector from Indonesia, what is the business sector from Indonesia that acceptable to the Australian community?
Yeah. Well, look, any industry or business sector can be acceptable to the Australian community. It's probably more about how you go about doing business in Australia, which I've noticed when I've had groups here from Indonesia and when I've been in Indonesia myself. So in Australia, the number one way to get business is to make friends first. So, Australians like to have mates and friendships and relationships and get to know you and trust you, before they'll do business. Sometimes Indonesians can be a little bit like straight to business. So that's why Australians like networking and, so I would, do things like use your LinkedIn profile to reach out to people. A huge benefit could be back the other way in that you could help your Australian friends potentially enter the Indonesian market, because a lot of Australians in business still don't appreciate the size of your market. Like, and maybe it's more now, and we only have 26 million people in Australia. So you have another zero on the end, right? So a lot of people don't understand that, Australian businesses could be providing to Indonesia too. Indonesian businesses coming back the other way. I've seen examples where it's been things like food or clothing or tech. Indonesians are really good on mobile tech in particular, and we're not so good on that sort of thing. So, but again, if you just take the approach that you've got to make friends first, reach out to people, other female entrepreneurs perhaps, who can then open up their networks and help you get connected, and think about it, well, if people in Australia are helping me with this, what can you help them with as well? And, build your relationships over time. But, I think agriculture, food, like there's a bunch of areas where there's a natural kind of collaboration. Also people in education, social enterprises, those sorts of fields as well. There's some areas that kind of like Indonesia and Australian startups, line up very well and could easily work together.
Okay. Can't wait to have a collaboration with all womenpreneurs in Australia. But we have to build our network and relationship first, yeah?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, let's check our comment section. I think all questions already answered. Thank you for all audience to for the questions. I hope you received a clear answer from Wendy. And Wendy, before we close our session, I just want to ask you: do you have any last message or any message to any womenpreneur in Indonesia and Australia?
Yeah. Well, I think that notion of networking and connecting more would be fantastic. There is lots and lots of opportunities to collaborate. So if that's something that maybe we could do with Shestarts.id, or people want to reach out individually, next year is looking bright at the moment, but the reality is that we'll still be living with COVID-19, and things like travel, you know, for example, might not be something that we can do for quite a while. So this is really now to maybe review your strategic plan and your focus and where you want to put your time, energy and effort. And if you haven't already got those connections or relationships, you know, in the Australian market, more than happy to sort of help people with some introductions. But I think this year has also shown that, you know, we could also look at we could look more globally. Like we can easily look at other kind of markets now. And, you know, even when we've done all of our online events and webinars, people have just registered from all around the world. And people have been much more easier to connect with, communicate with, to tap into. So I hope that you do see next year as a bright year, as a year where you can hone in and focus on what you really want to do, but definitely take things to the next level as well.
Okay, thank you, Wendy, for your message. And we have to close this session, but we are very grateful to have you here and really happy to receive your insight and knowledge. Hopefully we can do the same thing in Indonesia for womenpreneur in Indonesia, and we can fight together to reshape our business through this pandemic. And for the future, finger crossed, we can have a brighter year in the next year, and we can rise our business again. Okay, thank you, Wendy, for your time. And also, I would like to thank all the audience who already watched this event. Thank you for the questions also. And we have a giveaway, actually. We have 3 giveaways for 3 audience who already asked some questions for today's event. So, Wendy, do you want to choose the 3 people? I think we only have 3 questions, actually. When I already did the count, and we have 3 audience who asked the questions. So congratulations for, let's check, for Kiki Bidari, for Natural Factory, and Dewi Supraba. We will contact you to manage how to send the giveaways to you. And okay, Wendy, let's close our event this morning. I would like to thank our support for this event. Thank you to Australian Awards, and also for Queensland University of Technology, Australia Awards, Bejo, Anak Brisbane, OJK, dan Etnomark. Thank you for your support. And for the audience, thank you for watching us. And Wendy, again, thank you for sharing your time with us this morning. This is really a fruitful discussion. We received a lot of information about reshaping business in Australia, and hopefully we can do the same thing here in Indonesia, and we can have the future collaboration between Indonesian womenpreneur and Australian womenpreneur. Okay, we have to close this event. Thank you very much, and stay safe, stay healthy during this pandemic, and see you in the next event. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Wendy.
Thanks, Geraldine. Thanks, everybody. Appreciate it very much, and hope to catch you soon. See ya.
See ya. Bye.